But if we break it down even in language, the word solvent comes from Latin meaning one, okay? And it's where the word sun comes from, the light of the world, the bringer of life to our world. And then vent comes from the Latin verb. There's really not a V sound in classical Latin. It's pronounced with a W, so it's venio is the verb, and it's pronounced venio, veniere, ventus. And that means to come or to become present, to arrive. So think about it. We break it down like that with the etymology of the second part of the word vent, from venio ventus in Latin, ventus. It means for the sun to arrive, the light to arrive. That's not amazing, right? No. It's just a coincidence. It's nothing to see here. Move along. The light to become present, the soul to become present, the one to become present. Unbelievable. And that is the solution. The acceptance of the truth, of the light, of true unique individuality and the value of the individual, the acceptance of that truth. That is the solution. That is the fundamental worldview shift that brings the solution into manifestation through the dissolving of the ego and the acceptance of truth. Now, what we're going to talk about throughout this section involves the understanding of causality and natural law, which we've already talked about. We've talked about it to a point of practical sickness that I've repeated the same things over and over so much. But unfortunately, that's what's necessary, to keep saying the same thing over and over again for people to really get it, for it to sink in. Is that a form of mind control? Yes, it is. For the right reason. It's a form of mind influence when it's done for the right reason. It's not mind control. It's the influence of people's psyche to put them on the right path so that they truly understand it and grasp it for themselves at some future time. But repeating it over and over and over and over again plants that seed in deep ground. Getting ready to explain image number 11. This is a slide that I posted on Facebook this week and wrote a bit of an explanation of, because I think it is the greatest scene in almost any movie ever made. And it tells the ultimate secret to the universe, basically. It's from The Matrix Reloaded, the second part of the Matrix trilogy, movies which very few people understand from an allegorical perspective, and they really need to understand what these movies are telling us, because there's some incredible truths revealed through these allegories. I just want to say, if anyone is holding on the line who is called in, I will not be taking calls today on the show, and probably not for the next few weeks, because this material is so important. I'm going to just hammer on it, okay? And it's just going to be me talking over the next few weeks. So phone calls coming in several weeks. Let's just say that now, okay? So don't bother to call in for the next few weeks. I'll let you know when I'm taking calls again. I'm going to put this material out into the world in the way I want it put out there over the next few weeks, because this is the things the people need to understand. These are them. These are the things people need to get regarding the dominator culture. And I'm going to put it out there in a completely unapologetic and unwavering fashion with no distraction.
I see communist think tanks that have taken over the school system. This is why. What is an interesting dynamic to look at when you watch, the television reporting of this election, this recent election? The dynamic I did find interesting, Alfred, was looking at the absolute discrepancy and disparity between the concentrated urban communities and all of the rural communities in the United States. almost invariably in every single state, in the most concentrated urban centers, in all the cities of America, the Democratic Party ruled completely. And this is because their movement is toward total socialism. Their movement is toward socialism, which then acts as a foothold to get communism installed. Okay? And this is proof that the plan of the European think tanks that recognized that the Bolshevik Revolution tried to take power too quickly and did it militaristically was a long-term failure. And that's why communism fell, and it fell in the Eastern Bloc country. It fell in the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc countries. They re-established this plan shortly after the Bolshevik Revolution, centered in the think tank called the Frankfurt School, which is in Germany. And the Italian communist Antonio Gramsci, who was one of the influential members of the Frankfurt School at that time, came up with the concept of the long march through the institutions. This is something all of your listeners should already be familiar with if they are not, and should research if they are not familiar with it. Antonio Gramsci, the long march through the cultural institutions, the Frankfurt School of Germany. It's a political think tank. They recognized that it would be far more effective to bring communism into the world, worldwide, by doing it through the cultural mechanism instead of a military mechanism. And they recognized that the absolute preferred best way to bring communism into worldwide communities through culture would be to do it through the education system. And in all the urban centers, this plan was instituted in America. They brought people overseas, implemented them as point men in the positions of power, particularly in the education systems, and slowly worked more and more of their people who had their mindset into the university system in America. That's why what's happening, and anybody who understands this dynamic is true, what I'm saying, can see that what's happening in America is in all the urban communities, the children are being massively brainwashed, particularly in colleges and universities, to come out of that system. This is why they called it in the Soviet Union the outcome-based education system. It's not education at all. It's indoctrination to ensure that anybody who goes through that gauntlet or that ringer is going to come out, outcome, the way they want them to, thinking the way they want them to think. And this is what's happened in America. And this is why in all the urban communities in America, they vote heavily socialist to almost radically communist. Okay? That's the political variance and spectrum. It goes from moderately socialist to radically communist. And there's nothing else. That's almost 85% of the city of Philadelphia voted Clinton yesterday. 8.5 out of 10 people. You can't get that kind of universal agreement on what color the sky is, people. Okay? I mean, you can't get that kind of agreement on whether water is wet in America. 8.5 out of 10 people voted Clinton in Philadelphia, in the city of Philadelphia, although Trump took the state. And here's why. There's only two big urban centers in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, that's it. The rest of, if you've ever driven through Pennsylvania, it's wide open country practically, okay? I'm telling you, all of these urban communities, amounted, that's where all the votes came in from. I'm sorry, not urban, all of the suburban and rural communities is where all these votes came in from for Trump. And hence he took the state. And he was the first Republican to take the state of Pennsylvania since George Bush Sr. So, I mean, this is what we have to understand. The discrepancy between rural and urban communities isn't just because it's a difference in lifestyle, because some of these people grow up on farms or, have a whole lot of grass and trees around them. They're connected to the same media outlets that we are. They have televisions in their house. They have computers in their house. They have internet. They have movie theaters. They're exposed to all the same stuff. What's different is they don't have at the university or college level the same schooling system there. Their children aren't being run through the ringer, through the gauntlet of the communist-controlled school system in the urban centers. And it's very, very, very smart what these people did. What these communists did, I have to hand it to them. They had their strategy down. They went to the place where the numbers are. That's what you got to do. They went to all of the highly populated urban centers to implement this plan. And that's why in every urban community, it's moderately socialist to radically communist. And that's how they vote. You know, instead of all these people saying we're not voting at all, the dynamic that they are voting in, especially in the urban centers, is socialism and communism, because that's what the Democrat Party has become a representative of. Ultimately, it's all the same thing. It's all going to continue imperialism, warfare, radical divides between financial classes of people, continuing the destruction of rights, continuing the destruction of morality, and ultimately enslaving people. There's no difference between radical right-wing politics and radical left-wing politics. The only difference is in the way they package it, the way they pitch it to people, and in the way they implement it as far as their logistical strategy goes. The end result is always the same. The end goals are always the same. Total control, you know, and yet people still can't see it. I'll attack communists and I'll get called a Nazi. I'll attack Nazis and I'll get called a commie. You know, how about being an American who stands for moral principles and doesn't want any of these two satanic ideologies, because that's all they are. One's the left wing of the big demon called Satan, and one's the right wing of the big demon called Satan. That's it. That's all it is. That's all they are. They're Satan's wings. That's all. Left wing and right wing both belong to the same guy. You know, I'm not even saying I believe in an anthropomorphized deity known as Satan. It's a concept, people. You know, it's an allegory. Okay, you know, understand the metaphor. We're talking about evil and how it rules, and evil does rule. Evil right now in the world is more powerful than good in the world. You know, you want to talk philosophically about which force in and of itself is more powerful. You can make the argument good is more powerful than evil ultimately at the highest level of existence. On earth, however, evil is more powerful than good. There's no question about it, because more people have taken evil into their mind and heart and accepted it as normal than have taken good into their mind and heart and accepted the fact that they must propagate it to others. You see very few people doing that, talking about objective morality, talking about that order following is not a virtue. I mean, I could count the people doing that in the world on two hands, maybe. Okay? And until that number grows, I mean, exponentially grows. It has to be millions of people doing that. Like I said, when I type in order followers into Google, I don't want to see my name. I don't want to see my name. That's disgusting to me. That is horrifying to me. I went onto a search engine the other day. I said, let me just see who else has presentations or is talking about or has a podcast or anything on order followers. And I type in the term in double quotes, order followers. Mark Passio, Mark Passio, Mark Passio, Mark Passio, Mark Passio, Mark Passio. Page after page after page, nothing but me. That's sickening to me. Sickening. And I'll start to say maybe the dynamic is changing a little bit when I see that a dynamic like that changing, but I don't see it changing. I stand alone when it comes to talking about that these are the people who are ultimately responsible. Everybody else wants to give them a pass, you know? I mean, I was listening to InfoWars the other day, and I thought Alex was doing a great job and his crew was doing a great job trying to expose the occult with these Podesta emails. And in the next breath, they'll say they support the police. You know, order followers. How could you support the police and the military? I think in a way, you know, I haven't really said much about it. That's why somebody like that doesn't want to bring me on his show. Because all I'm going to talk about is the illegitimacy of authority and the illegitimacy of following orders. That's it. That's all he'll get out of me if he does bring me on, which is now has probably, doing this interview has probably solidified that that's never going to happen. Whereas I think it could be a very powerful combination because he does expose the occult. And if you want somebody to expose the occult a lot further, you can bring me on that show and I'll do it. But, you know, I'm not going to make any excuses for the people who actually carry out violence against other people. And you know what? That's not these politicians. You know, they're not the ones who are actually taking our rights away from us. The police are. The police are the people who actually implement the taking of rights, not the politicians. The politicians are the ones who come up with the grand scheme to take the rights away from other people. Who actually does that behavior are the police, and always have been. And that's why when a totalitarian society takes over, it's called a police state. It's not called a politician state. It isn't called the president's state. It isn't called the governor's state. It isn't called the banker's state. It isn't called the priest's state. It's called the police state because they're the people who are actually implementing the totalitarian violent measures, not the politicians. And people still don't understand that. They still don't get it. They still don't get having that force. They don't even understand the racist origin of the police. And no, this is not a social justice warrior tactic. It's historical fact. Police were originally instituted where slavery, black slavery was once a common practice. And when black slaves were released from their slavery, they were looked at as practically wild animals in the community by their racist former owners and masters, and they implemented police forces in their communities to protect them from what they looked at as horrific, evil, wild animals roaming the streets now, roaming the community. That's the racist origin of the United States police departments, okay? And people need to look into those origins and understand also in the North, they came out of a conglomeration of gangs that were originally running all kinds of immoral operations in their communities, but yet came together because they wanted to protect their territory. And they didn't want other gangs making encroachments into their territory. And that's a lot of the origins of police in the modern day in the northern part of the United States, especially in the New York, New England area. The police in America, the origins of them has nothing to do with any morality or any desire to keep people safe from a truly moral perspective or reason. It came from wanting to stop former black slaves from doing anything harmful to their former masters, and from gangs who wanted to protect their communities from the encroachments of other gangs. That's where police, that's the origin of police in America, folks, and nobody knows this. Nobody talks about this. And you think these people are moral people? You think they actually care about what's right or wrong? See, that's the thing. People who get involved in the whole truth-telling business, they look at it like, I have to soften everything. I have to soften my tactic, my approach. You're going to notice with me, folks, if anything, my approach is getting harder and harder core. It's not going in the other direction. It's not going in the direction of tolerance or compassion to evil. It's going in the direction of becoming more and more extremist against evil. Because good should not be wishy-washy. Good should not be weak and wishy-washy. Good should be infinitely stronger than evil. It should be infinitely more resolved and firm than evil is. And I don't see it. I don't see that, not in this world. Not here on earth / hell. No, I don't see it. I see people who say they're good, saying, let's have tolerance for this. Let's excuse this person's behavior because, oh, he didn't know. She didn't know. Everybody knows, ultimately, whether they're harming somebody or their rights or property. To say they don't know is a bullshit excuse, pardon my language. Okay? That's exactly all it is and all it ever has been. I tell people, have you ever been wronged by another person? Do you know what it feels like? Well, then don't do it to other people. And don't give me any nonsense excuse that cops that know they're doing something wrong to other people. They just believe they've been taught it's the right thing to do. Utter nonsense, sheer nonsense. And what that's called is good, so-called good, being wishy-washy and making excuses for evil. And that's what the role of religion and the New Age movement is, folks. The role of religion and the role of the New Age movement is to say, let's have all this tolerance for evil. I actually attended a speech by a Buddhist. I don't even feel like trying to remember his name because of what nonsense it was. And he said the highest level of enlightenment is total tolerance for the cognitive dissonance of others. Really? That's what Buddhism is. That's news to me. I thought Buddhism was understanding the causal factors of human suffering and then trying to allay it by understanding that there is a better path to walk in life than all those factors that caused all the suffering we self-generated. That's what I thought Buddhism was, but I'm sorry, maybe I'm completely incorrect. Maybe Buddhism is looking at somebody else and saying, I know you're an evil bastard, but I have total tolerance for the evil that you commit every day. Sheer nonsense. And this is what the New Age movement wants to propagate. This is what they want to put out there. And this is what religion does every day. You know, and that's the other thing. People want to think that this has nothing to do with religion. You know, I just told somebody the other day, these people have a sick, depraved religion. So I don't care. I don't want to know anything about that. I don't believe in that. I mean, imagine that. You don't want to know what the religious foundational belief systems and ideologies of your owners are? Of the people who actually believe they legitimately own you. Not saying that they do. All slavery is inherently illegitimate and can never be legitimized. But here's a person who thinks he's informed, saying to me, I'm not interested in knowing about what their belief systems are. And you think you're going to defeat that enemy. You're going to defeat that enemy without knowing a thing about how they think. Good luck. Good luck. With any confrontation, battle, combat, if you don't know the enemy has you beaten already. And that's where we're at. That we think we know what we're fighting. We think we know who we're fighting. We think we know what their beliefs and tactics are. We know nothing about it. And part of what holds that back is religion, because religion is owned and controlled by them. And what they want to do is tell you, don't dare ever look into the occult. That's what all religious systems tell you. Don't look into the occult. And there's a reason they tell you that. Because that religion that's telling you not to look into the occult is the occult. That's them. That's owned and controlled by them, by your owners, by your masters. They don't want you understanding their strategies and mindsets. They want you ignorant of those strategies and mindsets. So they're telling you constantly through religion that you think is so good, don't look into the mindset and ideology and plans of your masters and owners. Why would they tell you not to look into it? Not because it's evil. No, because they don't want you to grasp the chess strategy that's being used against you. They want the chess master to have all those strategies to himself. And so you sit down at the board and you get your ass destroyed. Handed to you on a platter. Here you go. That's what they want. They want it to be a no contest because the people are in total ignorance and the masters are in total knowledge. And that's what every religion does. Every religion, because every one of these religions, I don't care whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Taoism, Buddhism, Islam, they're all designed by these people. They're all designed by these people. All of them. All of the so-called occultic schools, Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, all of it. I'm not telling you, you should know about it all. You should study it all. You should be a generalist and have knowledge about all of these things. But to be a joiner is a different thing. To be a joiner is to have that ego identification and say, I'm going to give my identity to this group. That's what the police do. That's what the politicians do. That's what people who work in government, who work in medicine, who work in law do. That's what people who join sports teams do. That's what people who join these secret societies do. They don't care about your rights and your individuality. They care about the preservation of the unit, which is a collective, which is the difference between collectivism and true individuality and individual rights and sovereignty. Even the free man on the land so-called movement does this. Oh, we have knowledge that other people don't. It's like a little secret society clique. Oh, we're going to get our masters to leave us alone and not beat us anymore. And we'll do this through political tricks in their system that they designed, that our masters designed. Yeah, and that's freedom. They're a joke and always have been. And it's another group I've let off the hook way too easily. Another ego-bound, ego-identified groupthink organization, wherever they happen to be. Because it's saying, I'm going to work within the existing evil system to have the evil leave me alone for a little while. And you think you're free. And by doing all of that paperwork, you're giving legitimacy to that system. They're criminal thugs. They never had any legitimacy. It was never been legitimate, ever, for 1 second. Ever. I'm sovereign now with no paperwork. And the 45 on my hip will protect my sovereignty when someone tries to take it. And my mind will protect it before my hand ever touches that 45. You know? That's sovereignty. I'm not cooperating no matter what you do to my body. That's freedom. I'm not afraid to die now. I've done what I came here to do. My soul's prepared and ready. I spoke out against the evils of this world. I told people what the difference between right and wrong behavior is and how they need to get their mind out of the trash that it's stuck in. The total erroneous belief systems that do nothing but cause division and suffering. I've done it. I'm ready to go at any time, any second, folks. Okay? How many people can say the same? Not many. Not many. So, you know, people within these communities will say, oh, this isn't about religion. This is entirely about religion, folks. People in the so-called political communities, the free man on the land community, the so-called freedom movement, okay, libertarians, you try to explain to them this isn't a political ideology, this isn't a political agenda, it's not a financial agenda. This is a religious agenda. What constitutes the rulers of the world is a religious priest class. They invented all the ostensible religions to insulate people from their religion. To tell them, don't ever look into this sick, depraved thing called the dark occult. No, you want to remain ignorant of that. Oh, you'll be so pure because you'll have no working operation of how your owners think. But you'll be pure. Ignorance is never pure or good, people. The creator of the universe wants us to be free. Only knowledge is going to be the path to that freedom. And people always want to bring up, you don't talk about Jesus as the Savior. No, I don't. I don't talk about anybody as a Savior. I don't believe in saviors. I believe that work is what is going to save people. Hard work to change consciousness. Effort is going to save people. Care is going to save people. Willpower is going to save people. You develop intelligence, care, and will. Let me tell you something, folks. That's God. That's the Trinity that is God. Okay? That's what will save you. Not belief in anything. Belief, 2 dimes and a nickel will get you 25 cents. That's what belief will get you. And yet, there's radical believers all over the place. This is what my whole presentation at the next Free Your Mind conference is going to be. It's called fake-ass Christians. I'm just going to absolutely lay into the so-called Christian community because you are nothing of the kind at all. You're no Christian. You're Christians in name only. You haven't even deeply looked into what the work of Christ was, who stood against the political establishment of his day, the financial establishment of his day, and the religious establishments of his day. That's what the allegory of Christ biblically is all about. And people still can't see it, and they still can't see Christ was killed by the police in the allegory. I tell Christians, Jesus was murdered by the police. And they're like, what? Like I just told them some big shocking revelation. The Roman centurions of the day were the police of their day. They were acted as the police and military of the control system of their day. And they're the ones who actually, in the allegorical story, crucified Jesus. How can't Christians see that? Why? Every time I tell that to a Christian, the police put Jesus to death. Do I get a look like I'm the devil? Like I'm evil for saying that? When that's exactly what the case is. And then these people call themselves Christians. Say, Jesus didn't believe in government. He fought against the Roman government. He didn't believe in money. He fought against the money changers, the modern bankers. He didn't believe in religion. He fought against the Pharisees and Sadducees, the established religious sects of his day. And again, I don't care whether you believe in Jesus as a physical person or as an allegorical story. It's irrelevant. It's the lesson contained in the story that matters. People who think they're so religious, have this erroneous notion of morality. Don't really know what the difference between right and wrong behavior is at all. Think they do, and they have no idea. They're moral relativists. They believe in the law of man. They say they serve the master, which is the God of creation, and yet they say man can implement his laws on earth. And they can be different everywhere, depending on where you're at or what time, what time period you're living in. And laws can be all different. Yeah. And then they claim that they're Christians and that they serve God. And they serve his laws. I mean, fake isn't even a good enough word for it. I almost need to come up with something more abrasive and more vitriolic to describe it. They're a total laughing joke if they think they are serving, quote unquote, God. The only God they're serving is, again, that evil force that ultimately created this whole system of control by continuing to believe in it and accept it. That's the God they serve. So most Christians are worshiping Satan and are Satanists without even understanding what Satanism is or knowing that this is the ideology they even subscribe to. So, I mean, that's really my assessment, Alfred. I mean, I'll welcome any other questions that you want to get into or any other topics. If you want to go off on a completely different direction or tangent, that's fine. But I just wanted to get that rant out of my system to just say this is where I think things are, folks. I arguably believe that they are worse than when I started talking. When I started speaking, I think things were better. I think people were a little bit more open-minded and conscious around when I first started speaking back in 2007 publicly. Now, they've tightened the mind control screws way down. And they have, especially the young, people in their 20s are brain dead. Brain dead. They have tightened the screws. They realized, whoa, our formula went off somewhere along the line, and we got to get it back on track. These think tanks did their homework on people, and they are using all the social media, and they are using the new technology to absolutely do a bombardment upon people's psyche, and they're getting it done. They are just, I mean, in a way, I have to have respect for my enemy, and I have to say they're getting it done. It's brilliant. But what they're doing is absolutely magic. I would not 10 years ago have thought possible that they could degrade and dumb down a population to the extent that they have. I would not have believed that it was this possible. I have respect as an enemy for them. I don't have respect for as a human being for them, but as strategists and the enemy in this great spiritual war, they have my profound respect.